Welcome to the Politics of Everything. I'm Amber Daines, your host and podcast producer. This is a half hour of power, a podcast dropping every week where I unpack the politics of everything, from money to motherhood, nutrition to narcissism, startups to secularism, the environment, quality, and much, much more. Our guests are seasoned in the field or topic of their choice, even if you've not heard of them yet. This is a non-partisan show. So while I love exploring varied views and get a buzz from a healthy debate of ideas, this is not a purely blue, white, green program. Please subscribe, tune in and enjoy the politics of everything. Jason Malouin started his career as a lighting designer for live theatre and worked all over the United States for about 5 years. He was obsessed with creating these dramatic, shifting lightscapes for the actors on stage to move through. It was replicating something as boring or as tricky as office light or a laser pointer-esque dramatic spotlight. It was super creative and super technical. Like many people, Jason came to an unexpected crossroads. He says, one can only do the regional circuit for so long. It was time to move to New York City and commit to that career on a whole new level or do something else entirely. But I knew there was more out there for me. What followed were some twists and turns career-wise, including 8 years as a wilderness guide all over the US, Mexico, South America, and the Caribbean. Later came photography, which is how I know Jason through mutual peers. He's won awards and has a reputation for being a master of the craft for a decade or so now. His images are more than art and smarter than the sharp headshots most of us are familiar with. It's about visually capturing the people he photographs as authentically as possible. And our topic today is this. So now I warmly welcome Jason to the Politics of Everything.
Well, thanks for having me, Amber. I'm excited to jump on here with you and share. This is really cool.
Podcasting remotely can be challenging, but it doesn't have to be. Since day one of the Politics of Everything, I have relied on Zencastr's all-in-one solution to make the process quick and painless, the way it should be for those of us who just love great content and want to get our ideas out into the world. If you know me, I'm obsessed with quality in terms of my guests, my sound, and everything about my show has to be great the first time. I'm time poor. It's so easy to use Zencastr. I'm not tech savvy and you don't need to be either. There's nothing to download. Just click on the link and off we go. Zencastr is all about making your podcasting experience easy, and with everything from local recording to automatic post-productions now in their toolkit, you don't have to leave your browser to get that episode done, and done fast. I have a special offer for you, and hopefully you can experience what I have with Zencastr. Go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my VIP code, the Politics of Everything, all lowercase and one word, to get 30% off your first 3 months of Zencastr Professional. How good is that? I want you to have the same easy experiences I do for all my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story. Absolutely. And look, we would love some visuals. We were just chatting about that in the preamble because it's what you do. But being podcast purist, I don't actually video these things. But I've given you a little bit of, an intro of what you've done career-wise. But, as a young kid, did you think you'd be working in this space? Is there some let's look back, join the dots and sort of see how we landed where we are? Or was it totally by chance or by life experience that you've ended up in this photography space?
It's kind of funny. This is a really good question because having had to think about it for a moment, it's always appeared to be pure random chance, but it turns out there is actually a thread that I was able to kind of follow as I pondered this. Look, as a kid, I was 100% convinced I was going to be a brain surgeon.
There you go. Wow, I would not have picked that as being
no, not at all, really. But I don't know why. There was something just so captivating about cracking somebody's head open and getting in there and digging around. And it kind of turns out that I'm not much of the physical mechanics kind of brain work these days, but really, it's everything I do is perception. It's communication. And, even specifically, like, for example, body language, that comes from the limbic part of your brain. We are meaning-making machines, and every single part of our body language, the way we express ourselves non-verbally, you have to understand where that comes from, that part of the brain is trying to do and accomplish. And so yeah, I'm very much into the brain, just not with scalpels,
not with
and tweezers.
surgical tools and so forth and scrubs. Look, this is a big question, my next one, but I think it's something I just want to touch on because, you know, people look at photographs and images and they create certain feelings, evoke certain ideas. What you do is obviously quite strategic. How do things like trust, authenticity, and integrity come together in one image or a series of images? How do you actually get to that point, I guess, is my question.
Yeah, this is a really good question. It's a huge one, actually. So let me start by saying trust is probably like the most important factor in all this, but we kind of can't start there. We got to come back around to that one. I'm going to break it down into the three things: the trust, authenticity, and integrity, because
sure,
like, first of all three of these things, trust, authenticity, integrity, these are side effects, much like weight loss is a side effect of healthy living, right? These are not things that we can do on camera. So there's all the things that we want our images to convey. There's all the things that we want to communicate with the world, but it has to be broken down into things that we can physically do, that we can physicalize and embody. So to take these massive ideas like trust, authenticity, and integrity and bring it into something that we can physicalize, it's taken a lot of really defining this stuff, understanding it, and coming at it from a very specific approach. So, for example, integrity, right? You can't do integrity, and integrity itself is this. It's a massive word. Like,
and it might mean something slightly different to different people. I mean, I think it has a universal meaning, but you know, people interpret it differently.
That's exactly it. So when you say integrity to you, integrity to me, it could be very different things. Sure, there's a shared thread of what we kind of understand that to be, but the parts of my deepest values, you know, show up in a different way. So integrity is very much the content of the image, right? Like, by taking that idea and digging deeper, you know, like, say, if integrity, for example, in this case is like, I do what I say, you know, that's still a bit deeper, but it's not something we can literally do on camera. We have to find something that we can do. So if integrity in that sense becomes, you know, a deep self-reliance and a deep self-esteem and you know, like, if we start to get to some of these more meaningful things, then we can start to express this on camera. So integrity will happen as a side effect of getting in touch with these deeper foundational aspects of that idea. And that's different for everyone, like you said. And then the authenticity, it's kind of like the alignment piece or even the context piece. So, like, because we have to do these qualities and attributes like integrity and other things that we want to express, we need our body to, like, kind of express these things in its most natural, honest way. So it's a bit of a range of motion, really.
It is, and it feels like it's different things in motion happening to actually bring that all together. And I guess when you're working with people and you may not know them, that must be a bit challenging because, you know, if you've got a relationship with someone, you know someone, you've hung out with them, you get a good sense of someone. When you meet someone in what is sometimes quite an artificial environment because they might be nervous about getting their photo taken or they're not sure what to do with their hands and where to look and what to wear and all those sort of superficial things, if you like. How do you cut through that, I guess?
Well, it's an entirely fabricated situation that most people don't find themselves in any kind of regular day-to-day thing. So it is insanely uncomfortable. recognizing that people are showing up on the very cliff's edge of fight or flight, quite honestly. I mean, people have, a person shows up to a photo shoot with very little certainty, very little control of the outcome. So they perceive in that moment. They're kind of hoping and dreaming this might actually work for me, and it's very confronting. So it's really a matter of managing the fear, the deep fear of everyone that's about to do this.
Yeah, I know. I always feel like that. And I've done lots of photos, and I've had a profile for a while, and I've had a career in the media, and I still get nervous when my photo is being taken. I don't mind in a group, like a team shot. It's just that individual stuff, and particularly if I haven't worked with a photographer before, even though if I love the idea of what they do, how do you get, I guess, what are some of the surefire ways that you get to know your humans, your subject matter, to capture that, I guess, best and true version of themselves versus, I guess, sometimes it's just people feel like it's about posing and looking very vanilla and the power shot and the blue steel from, movies. And I just think sometimes being told what to do is actually worse in my experience when they go, stand like this, cross your arms, look over here, look like you're laughing. Like, I hate those photos. I just can't do fake laughter.
No. And as audiences are more and more savvy to the bull mess.
Bull dust.
Can we curse here? I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe Apple iTunes will ban us, but yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, like any insincerity, I think, is picked up on far more quickly these days because we are so used to being bombarded with imagery. We assess, like I said, we are meaning-making machines. Our brains, that's literally what we do. And we say yes, honest, no, bullshit. Sorry, it's automatic.
Yeah.
So being put in a position where you're trying to recreate something real is pretty tricky. The way I like to do it is by, first of all, giving somebody some quick wins, right? Like and I think this is probably useful in any scenario, whether it's in a photography session or anything that you do with your clients, or potentially, people that are showing up needing to trust that you're going to be able to get this job done, being able to give someone a quick win where they go, oh, okay, this might actually be all right. That little bit of confidence is literally what pulls people back from that cliff's edge of the uncertainty and fear. From there, I find I have far more permission in that moment to kind of take people through a bit of a range of motion. So we do fabricate. Well, first of all, I need to kind of see how somebody moves, because everybody holds their tension differently. People have injuries and other kinds of life things affecting the way they hold themselves, move themselves. So really understanding how somebody holds themselves, how somebody moves, and how they can begin to express what they really are. From there, it becomes like this range of motion where we just kind of see what kind of means what on camera.
And do you often work to a brief? Is it often the idea, like my experience has been, these photos are for this purpose, or we want a series of photos we can do that cover these aspects of their business or their interests or whatever it might be? Like, is that how you're working? Yeah.
Knowing where these images are going to be used, how and why, what you're trying. Yeah, for sure. I mean, certain images need to go to certain audiences. A lot of times, like within a regular photo shoot, where we are communicating with multiple audiences. So we are making sure that, there is something appropriate for a potential client versus a speaking gig. Those would be potentially very different kind of images. So understanding what they're trying to accomplish is super important.
And sometimes I guess people they say one thing, but they really need more than that. Have you ever had that experience where they go, I just need some headshots for my LinkedIn and for my, business. And then it's like, well, actually, there's much more to this now.
And that all needs to be done up front. That needs to be, you know what I mean? That's a matter of like just good customer service.
Yeah,
on
not
the
just
front
bringing one
end.
outfit, for example, you know, and going, I just
Yeah,
want some
I've had that
headshots.
happen. I have had that happen.
Oh,
It's
I always
tragic.
say to people, just pretend you're just going to spill coffee on that outfit. What else have you got? You know, like, because, you know, you just don't
Well,
want to be limited by
and
color or all those sorts of things.
and in a very pragmatic sense, like if one is going into a photo shoot, you know, I've had people bring the most, their absolute power suits, you know, the stuff that makes them look and feel amazing on
Yeah.
stage or whatever. And in a particular setting, in a particular lighting, a particular background, if you're, it just doesn't work. If you're certain fabrics that don't, if you're sitting versus if you're standing,
Oh,
it
I
just
agree.
falls different. It doesn't work. So you need to be able to go, all right, this is the shot, but we need to go find something else that works better in here. So always bring a suitcase full of clothes. You can never have too many options. It makes everything a lot easier.
And I think if
But
it's a
in terms
static
of, like,
image,
getting-
people might think that they have more control, but I think in a static image sometimes, yeah, there's so much scrutiny. So like you look back at it and you go, wow, those pants are a bit tight, or that just doesn't allow me to move, or it looks crushed when I stand versus when I sit. And, you know, they're things which I think you become a bit obsessive with in a still photo, which if it's a video or something, it could be a little bit more forgiving because there's
That's
movement.
exactly right. I mean, a still photo is kind of brutal because it's frozen in time. When you're in a conversation with someone, there's all this like live context, and you don't notice all these weird little details. So yeah, we always talk about how retouching actually works during the photo shoot itself. And for me, it's more about getting it real rather than getting it right, you know? And I would rather take something away that is not relevant to the experience of you as a human in time and space. And getting it right is more of like the photojournalistic version of that cannot be changed. It cannot be altered. It must be 100% truth. And that's a fine balance, you know, the honesty versus the truth. There's kind of, it's a bit of a scale, and those are two very different things.
Yeah. No, it's very interesting. It's such a process which people kind of probably don't sometimes realize until they're in it as well. How do you think imagery needs to find ways to evolve? So, you know, we tell a certain story, clothes can tell a certain story, lighting, environments that you might do your shoot in versus, I guess, you know, people often want that hero photo, that thing that looks great on their LinkedIn profile, or they might use to get speaking gigs from their website, things like that. But I reckon sometimes it's so staged, you know, we try and look younger, we try and look more empowered, less vulnerable, less kind of, I guess, human. We try and look the best version of ourselves. But I do think over time you need to have a variety of images. So how can we get better at doing this without it, you know, being stuff that we are uncomfortable with? You have to love your photos, I agree. But I do think you get reliant on those one or two magic shots which, you know, have a purpose, but everyone's got the same photo, I feel like sometimes. Does that make sense? The CEO with the arms folded in the suit and the you know,
God,
just
the corporate crotch cover. We're standing there holding your wrists straight out in front. Oh my God, I can't do it.
I know you can't do it. And that's why we're having this chat and why it's you that I'm speaking to, because I think people don't know how to deviate from that without it feeling like this is terrible.
In all 100% honesty, it is not their freaking job. It is not, as you as a client stepping in front of a camera, it is not your job to know how to do this.
Yeah.
It is the job of the photographer, and anyone that tells you otherwise is full of it, or they don't know what their job is, because honestly, doing this is far more about like directing something rather than any expectation that you should know what to be able to do. But really, I mean, this is a kind of a chicken or an egg question almost, because yes, the imagery needs to evolve, but I think this is a much bigger question, or a much bigger answer maybe, but I think our vision of ourselves needs to evolve before the imagery can.
That's interesting. So just explain that a little bit for people, because I think it's hard to look back at yourself. And an image is almost an outward projection, but really what you're saying is it starts with us reflecting before we get to that point.
Yeah, 100%. Over the years, I've had far too many people show up to record an album without knowing how to play their instrument. And it just doesn't make any sense.
And is that because of lack of experience in doing it, or a kind of pre-described way that they think this is going to go? Like, how do you build that confidence, I guess, to really get there quicker, I suppose?
Well, I think for any business to be relevant, I'm just going to go kind of like 30,000 feet on this one real quick. Like, it's about creating a transformation rather than creating some kind of information. You know, there has to be some kind of outcome. There has to be the thing that you get when you sign up to buy the thing, right? But knowing that this is a transformational opportunity to realign and redefine and recommit to who you really are. Like, it's so much bigger than just getting some pictures. So in a very practical sense, right? Understanding that I say it's like communicating in 3D.
Yeah, right.
Everything that I do in my pictures visually, I try to make the images feel more 3D. That's the way I like to try to communicate through my images more in 3D. But for the person standing there, knowing that there are really only three things that we can communicate to create a three-dimensional perspective of us, our businesses. There's your skill set that you can communicate. That's very much what you do. And then when you get really good at it, there's what you really do. And then there's what you really, really do.
The layers. It's like peeling back, all those layers, I guess.
100%. And the better you get at communicating what you really, really do, that's going to start to inform how we show up. But that only comes from the second one, which is mindset, how you think, how you want to think, what you think about, what you spend your time with your brain on, and heart set, how we feel, what we believe, our deepest values, like the place that we really come from when we go out to do the doing. So that communicating in 3D, when you can step into any situation, not just a photo shoot, this is literally anything. Like, when you are more aware of your heart set, more aligned with your mindset, changes the way you communicate your skill set. And this very profound process of like kind of getting in and having a real look at this stuff before you go out and communicate with the world and your audience in other ways, like photography, like the copy on your website, like an email that you're sending to a potential new partner or potential new team or new clients. It changes the way we communicate everything. It completely changes the conversation. So that's kind of the way I recommend people approach it. And that's the approach that I take with people in preparation for coming into a photo shoot. Because until we have some of this box full of parts, we don't really have anything to draw from when you walk into a photo shoot and it's like, all right, just do what you do. It's like, well, I can, but that's going to be my version.
Yeah, exactly. That sounds like a bit like, paint by numbers almost.
And it works because my vision of people, the way I see the world and the people that stand in front of me, I see people as incredibly powerful, intentional beings who are on this planet to have an impact and make a difference. So my filter on the world, comes through in those ways. But there are very real, subtle human nuances that you need to own that I can not really create for you. When I know what you want to do, I can create that for you. And I think this would come from I think this would be completely applicable if we're talking about a marketing plan. You take your stuff to a marketing pro who is the top of the pile, and they're going to say, who are you? What are you about? What are your vision and values? They need to know. They need the box full of parts before they can start assembling it.
Yeah, there's some great analogies and ideas in there for people to mull over. A very pointed question. Your favorite ever photo shoot and why?
Oh, man.
Is it like choosing like favorite pets or children or something? Maybe, but there's got to be at least one that stands out. It may not be the top favorite. There might be a few, but things that just worked and you're so happy with it and you love looking at that work.
There's the kind of the classic artistic answer to that question, which is like my next photo shoot is my favorite photo shoot because I'm always trying to top what I've done before, just in terms of the impact and the connection and the meaning and all that good stuff. But quite honestly, the stuff that stands out is the work that I have done for Oxfam over the years. I haven't done it for a few years now, but we used to go out on these adventures all over Australia. It was for the Close the Gap campaign, which is closing the Indigenous life expectancy healthcare gap. And I would go into these communities, very remote sometimes, very urban other times. So I'd either be like in town camp somewhere out in the middle of Kakadu, or I'd be speaking to the CEOs, photographing the CEOs of Indigenous organizations in Canberra and everything in between. And that experience of being asked to step into a community of which, I am very not part of, I'm not even from this country, let alone, have really much connection or experience with Indigenous folks at all, because this was kind of the early days that I was here.
Yeah. But that sounds like it stands out in your mind, which I think
was pretty special. And like, for example, this one time, men and women are a little bit separated in the communities. It's not really you cross over, you go talk to people and take people's pictures. But there was this group of women who were sitting under a tree, just chatting. We were on Palm Island, I think. And I was like, this is just so cool. And to walk over there and take their picture would have been the most disgustingly rude, inappropriate, like just wrong. Like,
it wouldn't have, you wouldn't have got what you wanted, I guess, as well, right?
Oh, I could have got what I wanted, but it would have been like paparazzi gross.
Okay.
And it would have left it would have left a foul taste. And so I was like, what, I love people. I can communicate with anybody. So I walked over and sat down and opened up a giant map that I had just bought at the gas station next door. And I didn't even say anything. I just said hi. I just opened it up and asked them to kind of show me. And then this whole conversation, all four of these women started talking about the map and showing me stuff. And it became this real, honest, simple, human conversation that didn't require pretext or anything forced. And from that moment, I had the permission to lift the camera, and it became something real.
Absolutely. And I think that's the point at the end of the day, right? That you're really getting to something as real as possible that everyone is happy with. Changing tack a little bit, your number one favorite business tool hack at the moment, and how is it helping you?
Look, I mean, this is as much of a business hack as much as it is a life lesson that I'm really this has changed everything that I'm doing, the way I'm doing everything, the way I'm communicating me and myself right now, recognizing that we are literally communicating 100% of the time.
Yeah.
Communicating nonstop, externally and internally, right? The internal, obviously, being the more significant of the two, but just becoming so much more aware of that inner monologue or dialogue, whatever it happens to be, so much more familiar with that voice and the things that are being said internally, thought, the feelings. So by being able to curate that inner monologue, that inner dialogue, and by training the mind to be first a little bit more aware of what we're thinking and what it is we're feeling. And then second, making really specific choices, I would say, like powerful, meaningful, intentional, fully aligned choices. Like, what do I want to be thinking? How do I
Yeah.
want to be thinking? What do I want to feel? How do I want to feel? All of this comes from the portrait session. Like, this is how I get the images that I get. But by taking this stuff and kind of reverse engineering it into my life,
Yeah.
and into my business in order to be able to communicate what I really, really do, that has been the single thing that has changed my business communication as well as my personal communication.
Yeah,
It's so
absolutely.
much more aligned. It's so
I
much
love it.
more
It makes sense though.
true.
It just makes sense. And I think that's often what you realize once you've had
Look, it
these sorts
makes
of
sense. And
epiphanies.
I think we all know this, on paper, you can
Yeah.
look at it and go, why, yes, of course, that's 100% correct. But the thing is that the time and the effort it takes to do this is significant. And it often just gets put off till later because there are other more pressing things in life that must be attended to now. Like, it's the truth.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
taking this time, some time, to revisit this, the more you can find little ways to put it in your daily experience, just to remind yourself, what do I want to be thinking right now? How do I want to be feeling? Like, what could I communicate differently? It starts to change how you show up, and it really starts to change the conversations around selling, because when a potential client is on the phone and I'm talking about photography and you get this many photos and this is what it costs, it's like, that's not the transformational experience that I want to create for my clients. It's really about, when I start talking about communicating in 3D, for example, it's like, it's just a very different conversation and it's a very different value.
How do you define your own version of success?
What? Okay. Do you want to talk about images or do you want to,
Just generally, so this is more
biz
about
life?
you. And, I guess for some, like a lot of my guests, depending what stage of life they're at, they've discussed the idea that when they were younger, it was about having an awards and external validation and a nice car and all those things. And, sometimes it's about different things now, or at the moment it's very consistent. And, I guess for you, when you reflect on your week, your day, whatever it might be, how do you know you've had a good one?
That external validation is very interesting. I've kind of just noticed, just as a subplot I've kind of noticed that we are often reaching outward to create more impact in the world, when at a certain point you must go within, re-engage, re-energize, re-alight those fires, because it changes your doing. Your to-be list changes the way we do our to-do list. So that external thing is really interesting because we tend to look outward when it really needs to come back in before it can go back out. But anyway, that's a bit of an aside. Look, I think success, it's kind of like, I just injured my disc a bunch of years ago, right, in my back, and I wanted to start running again. And I went out running a couple times, and it felt like I was starting over again. It was very frustrating, and I was getting frustrated with the fact that I didn't feel like I was able to do the thing that I used to do, and I felt like I was starting over. And it was, so I kind of had to go find this, I had to go look at the values. Like, what am I really trying to do here? Am I trying to run, or am I trying to express myself, my body in healthfulness? Am I trying to move my body in a joyful, playful way because I genuinely enjoy running, but couldn't really do it? So like when I was able to go, oh no, I'm not actually trying to run. Running is the side effect. I want to be able to run, but what I'm here to do is move my body in a joyful, playful expression of healthfulness. That is one of those examples of a moment by moment choice that gets me to a real result.
That's good.
So
I like that.
The success, for me, it is a moment by moment choice.
Yeah.
Because I might not be seeing the specific result that I want right now, but if I am fully committed to my values and fully aligned with the actions, it changes the value of all of it. It's a complete shift. And it's in those moments that I am running, even if I'm not running, if it means stopping and stretching, if it means walking, if it means jumping up and down for a second. That's what running is right now. And if that's the successful expression of what I deem healthfulness to be, then that is success in that moment.
Just a final wrap-up message for us on the politics of authentic imagery.
Yeah, look, there is a famous French comedian who I found a quote of his a few years ago, and it just gets truer and truer every time I think about it. He said, "You aren't responsible for the way your face looks, but you are responsible for the face you're making."
Gosh, profound. There you go.
It is, isn't it? It's very, there's a huge layer of self-responsibility on that. And again, it just comes down to the moment by moment choices that we're making. And, you know, we come into a photo shoot, for example, thinking of all the ways that we don't necessarily like how we look, but we do have a choice how we choose to show up and who we know ourselves to be and how we can express and embody and portray that, not just in our images, but in everything. I love that quote.
Such a great conversation. Of course, if you do want to connect further with Jason, there are some details on the show notes. You've been listening to The Politics of Everything with me, Amber Daines. Until next time, take care. Thanks so much for listening today. If you've enjoyed The Politics of Everything, I thrive on your feedback. So please add a short review and share the podcast with your network through Apple, Spotify, and all the usual suspects. I'm always on the hunt for new and diverse guests, so if you or someone you know has a fresh idea you're busting to get out there, please email me at amber@amberdaines.com and my crew will get back to you very soon.